Hi, Alysa. How are you doing?
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you, too. What a pleasure to be here with you in the Kelly Dry office. We never get to do these huddles in person.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. And, of course, we're here because we had an amazing event yesterday with Privacy State of the Union here in D.C.
We did. We braved snow and ice and, very scary forecasts to make it happen, and it happened.
Thank goodness, because when you put all this energy into planning an event and then it has to suddenly go virtual, it would have been a bummer. So it was so nice to have so many people come out. I'm actually amazed that we had so many folks in person.
Right.
It was great.
Privacy practitioners are committed.
They are.
We're a special breed.
Committed, loyal, friendly. It was a great day. Yeah. So, of course, we had many folks who couldn't make it. So was hoping that on this huddle we can just kind of recap some of the best sessions from yesterday.
Sure.
It was such a pleasure, intimate event here in the Kelly Dry DC office. And as usual with these intimate events, I think one of the highlights is just getting to hear from the regulators and enforcers in such a small setting.
Always, always. I mean, look, what they do matters. What they telegraph or forecast, that helps you prepare. I mean, you can't do everything, but you can certainly prioritize. So I certainly found each one of those discussions helpful.
Exactly. So let's talk through the highlights for folks that couldn't be in the room. Of course, we started the day early with the fireside chat that you hosted with Chris Mufarich from the FTC. I thought that was a great behind-the-scenes look at what he does on a day-to-day basis and also what he's forecasting to prioritize for 2026. He highlighted two key things we can expect to see from them this year, which are pricing transparency, including ticketing, as well as children's privacy focus. What else did you take away from that conversation with him?
Well, I think sometimes there can be an assumption that a Republican administration, and certainly this one is very business friendly, which means no activity. And I think what we heard was no, there's just a different set of priorities. And so the price transparency, and we've seen it with their actions from a lot of subscription cases, that's going to continue. The ticketing cases that he was talking about, I mean, really thinking in a time of affordability that we hear about, like that is what they're going to be looking at. Is it clear and conspicuous? Is it accurate? Are there consumer surprises? He pointed out certainly their consumer complaint database, and that is driving some of the priorities. That's not a surprise. I thought he was pretty candid about closing letters, which was, I mean, that sounds total regulatory DC lawyer nerdy, but like, look, companies don't want to necessarily end up in a settlement, which is, an important order that they have to usually deal with for many, many years. But a closing letter is another way of resolving an investigation. They don't happen a lot, but they do communicate to the business community XYZ is an issue, and here were some steps that company took to address those, and that ends up becoming really helpful business guidance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was fascinating, interesting new topic. The other thing that I loved yesterday was Michael Macko's keynote at the end of the day. He's just such a refreshing, I think, candid person in these small settings, and it was great to hear him talk about specifically the mindset with which he approaches these investigations. Tell me from your perspective just how you thought about that.
Well, again, nobody wants to be investigated, but I think everybody wants a fair shake, and the facts matter. And one of the points that he was very, I would say, crisp about is don't go in. It's very dangerous for an enforcer to go in with here's what the story is going to look like. They already have the ending in mind, as opposed to, no, you have to keep an open mind. You may have a theory, but you're asking for information and documents for a reason. You got to take it all in and evaluate it and give the company a fair shake. And so just to hear that was front of mind, I found was certainly for a lot of the companies in the room, just reassuring to hear. I think he talked about his team, and he's got, he's been building that team for quite some time.
Yeah.
And in the public facing world, like you don't see all that activity. And I think there's been a multiplier effect in enforcements where I think 2026 is a year where we're just going to hear a lot more settlements, a lot more, potentially litigation. We've already seen some litigation towards the end of December. So I think we're going to see a lot more privacy enforcements, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And then, of course, the last group we heard from on the regulator side was John Eakins from Delaware in conversation with yourself as well as Paul Singer from your team. But, of course, he has the Texas AG office background. Right. That was just a great discussion of how do they think at the state level went beyond just, for example, the consortium, which of course we saw teased in the press release, but they even gave more behind the scenes details of what that actually looks like across the states.
Right.
What did you take away from that chat?
Well, one, we knew that the states, I mean, these groups, a lot of them have been talking because they were consumer protection attorneys for well before that consortium was put together. But I think he emphasized not only how frequently they're speaking, but the shared resources. And Michael Macko actually mentioned that too. You know, the technology resources, the subject matter experts, that is getting spread among multiple states. And so I think what comes from that, that supersize powers enforcement, investigation targets. I thought the other thing that John Eakin said that was particularly noteworthy, we've heard from him in the past where they were looking at the low-hanging fruit. They were reading the privacy policies. They were saying, where rights may not be offered to certain constituents of their state, or the last revised date was old. But he talked now about, no, we're also prioritizing really getting into the data flows. Where is the data coming from? Where is the data getting disclosed to? What kind of diligence have you done, both upstream and downstream? And I think if the takeaway wasn't how would you answer that question and do you have records and compliance materials to show for it, if you didn't have that yet, that was a really good signal to prepare.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was such a pleasure to pull this group of speakers together, because it's always nice and reassuring to hear from folks in the room, as we did at the end of the day yesterday, just like how nice it is to get together. And I think a couple of the panelists even said that on stage, right, when they were asked from a brand leader perspective, what's one practical takeaway you'd give to the room? And everyone was just like, let's just have more conversations like this, right? All figuring it out together.
Yeah, I mean, and I think even what I heard, some of the comments were not just only let's all have this community because it really helps to benchmark in this kind of the arc of where privacy law is going, but a reminder, you have to talk within the company.
Yes.
And really break through some of those silos, because it cannot be the privacy legal or the privacy compliance side steering the ship on this.
Right.
You need to be able to have everybody rowing, product, government relations. Everyone needs to really understand this is a whole new ballgame.
Yes, I think you said yesterday, as a privacy leader can sometimes feel like shouting into a void, right? And so you need to cross those bridges to stop that feeling.
Exactly.
Well, great catching up with you, of course, Alysa. Folks, drop in the comments if you'd love any other highlights from this event. We covered just a wide range of topics, from sensitive data to children's privacy to these enforcer perspectives, and we'd be more than happy to share more on future chats. So let us know what you'd love to hear. Alysa, thank you as always for joining me.
Thank you, Colleen.